Okay, so this is a recording of Chapter 9, Ecce Romani, Goodbye. It's when, obviously, Cornelia has to say goodbye to her friend Flavia. Cornelia, ubi surgit, so Cornelia, when or where? Ubi here, I think, is going to indicate when. So when she gets up, she rises. Sneakily, furtum ambulat, she walks, she is walking, she does walk, out of sua villa, her own country house. And she runs, is running, does run, currit, through the fields, ad vilam, to the country house, amicae, of her friend. Amicae here is genitive singular, and it's either going to be showing possession and translated of her friend, like we just said, or it could be her friend's apostrophe s country house, showing possession of the country house. Non dum lucet, not yet does it shine, said, but nothing scares Cornelia. Corneliam here, the accusative direct object. Nemo eam conspicit, no one catches sight of her, no one spots her. Here in line 2, Nemo, if you would note, is sometimes troublesome for students because it looks as though it has a long O ending, indicating that it might be dative singular or ablative singular. These are cases and forms that you will learn of the second declension, but this is a third declension word, Nemo, and it is actually nominative. It's the subject doing the conspicuting, and it just merely happens to end with an O. Remember, third declension words in the nominative have no ending, and so therefore it is sometimes troublesome. No one spots her. Nulli servi in agris laborant. No slaves are working in the fields. In plus a non-accusative is going to just simply be in. And in this chapter, we're learning about prepositions and prepositional phrases. And thus we have the new case known as the ablative. Here, long is, in both the first and second declension, ablative plural is what they are. And for a word to be the object of a preposition like in, it's going to have to either be in the accusative or ablative case in the case that we see here. Here we have somewhat of an anaphora, even though they are not the exact same words. Nihil, nothing. Nemo, no one. And nulli, the adjective no, indicating which slaves, no slaves. And so it's a tricolon crescanes combined with something of an anaphora force. Etiam janitor ad januam villae dormit. Even the doorkeeper sleeps at, or to or towards, but here probably at the country houses, a genitive singular again, door, januam. And here we saw earlier, if you look in line 1, pair, that word, requires its object to be in the accusative, thus agros. Ad requires its object to be in the accusative, whereas here in line 2, in agris, when in means in and not into, its object has to be in the ablative, and that's the new case we're learning in this chapter. Cornelia, quod tacite intrat janitorem non excitat. So Cornelia, because she enters silently. Tacitus or tacita, masculine or feminine, would be the adjective silent, but when you take off the first and second declension ending from the adjective and replace it with a long e, it turns it into an adverb, and thus it is silently. So because she enters silently, non excitat, she does not wake up, janitorem, the doorkeeper. Continuing in line 5, Cornelia enters the bedroom of Flavia, or Flavia's bedroom. Again, we see that it's not a bunch of girls named Flavia doing things, so it's not nominative, plural, but genitive singular. Silently, tacite again, and she temptat, she tries, she is trying, she does try, excitare, to wake up her, to awaken her. Ad hoc dormit Flavia. Flavia still sleeps. Idrum temptat Cornelia. Again, Cornelia tries. Flavia, half asleep. And there's no word for says, but since we go directly into the quotation, then it probably is going to be implied. So Flavia, half asleep, says, Quis es? Who are you? Es, remember, comes from the verb esse, sum es est, and thus it's not I am or he is, but you are. So who are you? Cur me vexas? Why do you, with an s ending, annoy me? Cornelia respondit. Cornelia responds, Sum Cornelia, I am Cornelia. Surge, rise, get up. Flavia, surgit. Flavia rises. Happy, she welcomes Cornelia. Now, Lita here is modifying our understood subject she of excipit. But as we've so often seen, in English, we would rather say that she welcomes Cornelia happily. But in Latin, it is going to instead be the adjective modifying the subject, even though it has the exact same force as what we'd expect in English of the adverb happily. So happy, she welcomes Cornelia, and she shouts, Quid tu hic? Quid, what, as compared to, of course, in line 6, quis, which means who. So quid, what, you, here. Obviously, we're missing a verb, like what are you doing here? And here you can see that probably she's speaking in this way because obviously she's a little bit groggy and shocked at early in the morning before light even to see her friend in her house, in her bedroom, hovering over her, telling her to wake up. Cornelia, again, says, going directly into a quotation, Take, Flavia, be silent, be quiet, Flavia. Noli excitare, don't wake up the slaves. Veni tacite mecum in agros, come silently with me, mecum in agros. Now here we have, as compared to what we saw up in line 432, in agris, it was in the fields, here in agros, in line 9, into the fields, in plus accusative. So, Veni, come, mecum with me silently into the fields. Ibi, there, no one is able potest to hear us, nos. Now remember that nos is going to either mean we or us, but if it is going to mean we as the subject, our verb would have to end with mus, and it does not. It's potest, not possumus, and so therefore it tells me that it is the direct object, accusative, us translation, instead of the nominative subject, we. Cornelia Flaviam furtum evila in agros ducit. Cornelia leads Flavia silently, or not silent, sneakily, furtim, evila, out of the country house. And so here again we see that when we have the preposition ex or a, it requires its objects to be in the ablative case. And that's what we see here in the first declension long a ending its ablative singular. So out of country house, in plus accusative, into the fields. Ubi puellae ad arbores advenient. So when the girls arrive, advenient, come towards the trees, ad requires its objects to be in the accusative, and that's why arbores is in the accusative plural. She, Cornelia, says, Miser sum, I am miserable, I am sad, she says, quod, because I, and Marcus, and Sextus, and father, and mother, and here we have, obviously, so many ets, too many ets. It is what we call a polysyndeton. We are separating them all out, individualizing them from that polysyndeton. We, together, paramus, because anytime you add ego to a compound subject where there's more than one element, it becomes a we. So we are preparing, redire, to go back to Rome, Romam, today. Princeps patrum meam consulere vult. The emperor, Princeps, the first citizen, wants, vult, to consult my father. Nobis igitur necesse est statum discedere. Please do not confuse discedere with descendere, two different words that are slightly similar. This means to depart, and so it is necessary, therefore, igitur necesse est, for us to depart, to go away, statum, immediately. A couple of things here. One is that we are introduced with nobis to a new case. This is what we call the dative case. And anytime you see something in the dative case, you'll translate it to or for, whatever the word is. So that's why we say it is necessary for us to go away immediately. And when you, of course, translate the sentence, you say it is necessary. What is the it? What is the subject? Well, the subject is the act of going away. So going away immediately is necessary. And so the subject actually is the infinitive discedere. Flavia shouts, Cur statum Cornelia? Cur non paters tuus discedit solus? Cur vos omnes simul disceditis? Flavia shouts, why immediately, Cornelia? Why does your father, not known, depart, go away, discedit, alone? And then the tricolon crescanes combined with the anaphora repetition of that cur. Why do all y'all depart, leave, go away, disceditis, together, simul? And of course, Cornelia responds, Nescio Flavia, I do not know Flavia, but it is necessary, nobis again, the dative case, for us to go away, to depart, discedere, secunda ora. Now, in the ablative, you will learn that that's what we have here with the long a endings, those are ablatives, is that if there is not a preposition, as we have seen before, the way that you must translate ablatives are, as we have said in class previously, either by, with, because of, from, in, on, or at. Here, because we're talking about the second hour, I would imagine it's probably going to be at the second hour. Now, a word about that as well. Remember that the Romans, they divided the days into 12 hours, the first hour from 6 to 7, and then they divided the night into 12 hours, the first hour of the night from 6 to 7, what we would call PM, and then, of course, previously AM. So if it is at the second hour, the first hour ends at 7, the second hour ends at 8. So, but it is necessary for us to go away at the second hour. We would say 8 a.m. And again, your infinitive, discedere, is the actual thing that is necessary. It's an action, and so it's the subject. Flavia, lacrimat, Flavia, weeps, cries, O me miseram, vos omnes Romam redditus, y'all all are returning to Rome. It is necessary, necesse est, for me, another instance of the dative case that we saw, just as the same way with nobis, and so it's not me, but either for me or to me. So it is necessary for me, manere, to remain, hic, with a long I, here, vale, Cornelia, literally, be strong, Cornelia, but it's the way that they would say goodbye. And remember, if it were talking to more than one person, to be valete. Multas epistolas ad me mite, send to me ad me many letters. Promittisne, remember the ne on the end of a word indicates that it's going to become a question. So ordinarily, it would be, you promise, but here it's asking the question, do you promise? And Cornelia, ego promitto, ego for the emphasizing, I promise, hopefully implying to her, you better promise as well. Et jam vale, and now goodbye. Cornelia holds Flavia, and we have not yet seen it, but you will very often find that regardless of the declension, and complexu is actually a fourth declension word, the ablative case is just going to be signified by a singular ending letter, often long, and so here complexu is in the ablative. So it is an embrace, but you have to, of course, translate it by, with, because of, from, in, on, at, an embrace. And you have several of them. You can say in an embrace, with an embrace, that Cornelia holds Flavia in an embrace, with an embrace, and lacrimans, and weeping or crying. This is an example of a participle that we've seen before, present active participle. And here the form tells us that it would be nominative singular with that ns, like we have classmates whose names end with ns. But if it were in any other case, it would have the, of course, stem ending, nt, with then a third declension ending. So lacrimans is nominative, but the accusative singular would be lacrimantem, and of course the nominative plural lacrimantes, and accusative plural lacrimantes. And then abit is merely he or she, or it goes away. So, and weeping, she goes away. So, nevertheless, a sad time of saying goodbye for Flavia and Cornelia, but nevertheless, they will probably see each other again, maybe next summer or in the future. So good luck. Hopefully you study and pay attention with all the various different forms and content in Chapter 9.